to death to have as our first guest today Dr. Melissa Luke. Dr. Luke is a published author, professional speaker, and a career performance expert. She has held high-ranking positions throughout her life in many, many companies, co-founder and CEO of one of the first online trading floors in the United States. And I could go on with this long list of wonderful accomplishments. But I'm so excited to meet the lady who has written a book called 12 Steps to a Perfect Career. Life in the World of YOMO. Dr. Luke, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Paul.
And where are you today?
I am in Denver, Colorado today.
And how are things out that way?
Actually, beautiful, sunny, warm. We're kind of wanting the snow here. That's what most people come to Colorado for in the wintertime, so we're lacking a little bit of that. But outside of that, it's beautiful.
Folks back east that have never been out that way have the mistaken impression that it's always cold in Denver from about the 1st of November until about the end of March, and it's freezing cold. And that's just not true.
No, it's not. In fact, you have to dress in about 4 different outfits everywhere you go because it could be 50 degrees, and then all of a sudden it goes down to 20 degrees and up to 80 in the same day. So it's a little strange here.
So if you don't like the weather, wait a minute.
Exactly.
Well, welcome to our program today. I'm so delighted to get the chance to talk with you, and I'd like to start just by asking you, what is a YOMO? Did you turn that into a little stuffed character, or is it a cartoon, or because it sounds like something that would would come to life? Did you do that?
That's exactly what I did. You're very perceptive. A YOMO is an avatar or a cartoon character that we use to change a person's mindset. So we basically put information into a YOMO to help people accomplish their goals and their ambitions, because most people can't think they can do it with themselves. So we just give them a fictitious avatar to start creating and look forward to moving in a direction as your avatar.
Oh, I see it. I was going to ask you if there's a picture of it in the book, and there is. It's on the title page.
Little teeny guy.
Oh, he's a cute little guy. Did you have that made into little stuffed dolls or anything?
I'm going to.
Oh, you should. I want one.
I'll send you one. I love the thought, too. In fact, I created it from, I like bears, and I had kind of a strange, evil cat that kind of looked like him, and so he just he's an imagination of everything that makes me smile.
All right. Did you ever see the doll that they made that was called the year 2000 Millennium Bug? No. Oh, it's purple and black, and it's got about 8 or 10 antennae and 6 legs and big buggy eyes. And they were I don't know who made this. It might have been a private company that sort of seized on that name and turned it into this doll, stuffed animal, if you will. Or I don't know who did it, but I ended up with 2. I ended up with the large size. It's about 14 inches or 15 inches high. And then I ended up with a shorty that's about 8 inches high. It's like me and mini-me.
You might want to save those and sell them in 15 or 20 years as collector's items, I guess.
Dr. Luke, I have them in a styrofoam bag. Styrofoam? That's not the right word. No, cellophane. The cover that you get when you get your clothes from the laundry.
Oh, okay. You need to get them out of there. They can't breathe.
Oh, gee. Is that... That's why there's an odor coming out of my closet. They probably died. We've just lost it. It's over now. This interview's we're done for the day.
We are.
We're treating them like they are alive. But you know what? YOMO is alive.
YOMO is definitely alive. Don't wrap it in cellophane; it won't work.
I absolutely. I'm reading the book, and I've kind of scanned through it to get ahead of myself a little bit, but I sense a great feeling in the book that is something that I have had in my life for a long time by virtue of having heard Earl Nightingale's fabulous lecture called The Strangest Secret. And he talks about goal orientation. And that seems to be kind of one of the legs of your stool in this book. It's really terrific.
It is. And in fact, I started realizing that a lot of people aren't happy in their career, and I had to help fix that just because I'm an adjunct professor, so I have students that are graduating from college and with $50,000 in debt, and they don't like what they do. And basically my primary job is as a professional speaker inside corporations to increase the morale. And I found that most of them are running at a really low morale level. And so I thought, what in the world can I do to help all these people? Because I'm very fortunate, and I've loved everything that I've done. And when I don't like it, I turn around and walk very quickly. And so I started to formulate a theory on how to help other people do this, because it's life's too short to wander around and have a boring job.
My dad used to say, one day, son, what's great about America? Well, no, Dad, which one? There's 7,000 things. Couldn't dare say that to him. No, Dad, what do you mean? No chains. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you don't like what you do, quit. Go do something else. You can do that,
Absolutely.
And I
was a very smart father.
Oh, he was great. And I was 15, and I'm scratching my head saying, there's wisdom in there somewhere, but, I'm really too cool to sit down and figure that out now. But I was attracted to the quote that you used in your book from Steve Jobs, if I may, who said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary." Wow. Powerful.
Absolutely. It's funny. The book is dedicated to, unfortunately, Steve Jobs passed away the day I finished this book.
I saw that. That had to kind of hit you pretty hard.
It really did. I pulled up Google, and obviously his picture was there, and I stared at it for probably 5 minutes. I thought, this is surreal. It can't be happening. He cannot be gone. It just was a very strange thought. And then the second person that basically I wrote the book for is one of my best friends from college. When I was going to Arizona State University for undergraduate school, my best friend was a political science 4.0 GPA type of person, really driven, and I was mastering in happy hour, and I was doing equally as well. But we had a great life together, and all of a sudden she got diagnosed with cancer of the liver, and it passed to her rib cage and her breast and to her brain, and she died before she graduated. And it was a shock to me. It truly was. And so at that point, at a very early age, I decided I'm not going to work if I don't enjoy it. And I was working in a position running a trust fund for a mortgage company, and I hated it. And I literally walked in the next day and I said, I'm out of here. I'm not going to do anything else that I don't like to do, because when you see people die that quickly at that young age, you never know when you're going to go. So that's why I've really focused in on enjoying my career all my life. I may sound a little narcissistic, but it's a good thing to do. No,
I don't think that's narcissistic at all. But before we go any further, ASU, are they the Sun Devils?
They are the Sun Devils.
Yeah, they're the Sun. Arizona is the Wildcats, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I sometimes get them mixed up, but not today, thankfully, because I'm on the air with a Sun Devil, and I don't want to say she's a Wildcat. Oh!
Well, I ended up graduating from NAU, and they're the Lumberjacks, so it is a little...
Northern Arizona University?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, your book is just fascinating. I highly recommend this book to our listeners. The book is called 12 Steps to a Perfect Career, written by Dr. Melissa Luke, and you can find it on Amazon, I assume?
Amazon, Barnes & Nobles. You can go to my website at drmelissaluke.com and get it there. I'll send you a signed copy if you jump on that way. But, yeah, you can get it anywhere. Well,
it's a wonderful book, and it's going to help any college student that is past freshman or sophomore year anybody can read it. But now you're getting to be about 20, and you're kind of getting grounded a little bit, maybe seeing the future starting to unfold in front of you. Get this book, because it will help you. And we're going to talk about it for the next little while this afternoon, thankfully, and it's going to be terrific. Doctor, we have a hard break coming up here. We'll be gone for about 2 minutes, but we will be back, I promise. So you have time to get an iced tea and get comfortable, and we'll see you in a minute. We are speaking with Dr. Melissa Luke, author of the book Life in the World of Yomo. And I just met Yomo because he's a picture in the front part of the book. 12 Steps to a Perfect Career. Dr. Luke, I was reading your book, and I saw where a friend of yours urged you to write the book, and you were kind of reluctant.
I was a little bit, because writing is not my forte. I love to chirp away, chime, talk in front of thousands of people, but I am not really a person that loves to sit down and write.
Well, she then suggested that you get a dictating machine and dictate the content into that. Is that what you did?
No, actually, she's a very funny woman. Her name's Betty Fahey. She lives out in Long Island, and she said, why don't you just get a ghostwriter or go on Fiverr.com and get somebody to write it? And I said, what is Fiverr.com? And she said, people do things for $5. And I looked. I really did. So
no.
Somebody write my book for $5?
No, you did not.
I did, but I ended up writing it myself, and it actually became really fun because it is a short read. It's probably a 4.5 hour read, and it really was reflection back on the steps that I went through to get to that perfect career stage. And then it became kind of just like a story instead of really sitting down and writing some kind of technical thing that I'm used to doing. And that's probably why I don't like to write anymore, is because no one wants to sit down and write a 180-page technical paper on fraud. So I had a lot of fun writing it after I started.
Best part about the book is it's very inspirational, but it's easy to understand. It's in words that anybody can understand and adapt. You explain how things can be adapted. What was your first exposure, if you can remember this, to what we call goal orientation?
Well,
or did that just come to you out of the blue one day?
I've always had some kind of mystical fairy tale story in my head. So at a very young age, I just pretty much thought everything could be the way that you wanted it to be. At the age of 14, I envisioned myself sitting where I was when I was 25 years old and 30 years old, and so I've had that creative mind, and that's really where I focus in on Life in the World of Yomo, is taking you back to that childlike state where you really don't think that anything can stop you. And as the older we get, we almost become stupid. We just begin to think we can't do things. And so I try to pull people back into that young age where you think that you are unstoppable, and then we start all over again and make you unstoppable. And so that's kind of the mindset. I don't know where I got that mindset, but I'm 42 years old, and I still act like a child. So I don't know.
You're a mere youth. You are a youth.
I don't want to be mean, but I almost push people down to get in line at the to get on the rides at the fair or whatever. I want to get on.
I'll never tell. I'll never tell that. Shakespeare wrote, "Our doubts are traitors that cause us to learn to lose what we oft might win by failure to attempt." Our doubts are traitors that cause us to lose what we oft might win by failure to attempt. And I think that's where a lot of people end up. They may not be there when they're 16, but they get out in the work world and things aren't happening for them, and they get to believe that they can't change it, which they can. But over a period of time, the fears and the doubts take over, and they're powerless. In their mind, they're powerless.
And Shakespeare is absolutely correct. And the funny thing is in my book, I'm not introducing any new method that has never existed before. And
I don't know. Yomo is kind of new, and Yomo is something you can focus. I love the way you put all this. Yomo is the guy. He's the guy that can become somebody's focus. He's the guy to whom all of the principles in the book are kind of attributed, because he's the person that you're trying to create out of all these principles. It's a great idea. The book is a great idea. I love it.
Well, thank you very much. A lot of it is pulling neurology and quantum physics and all sorts of things that people do not want to listen to because it's just boring, and pulling it into a fun factor. So your Yomo is kind of putting yourself into a quantum physics realm. You're someplace else, and it is kind of, it's upper level, but it's written in a way that we can all understand it, even if you're in 8th grade. So
well, the book is actually presented in a way under the umbrella of what you can do. These are things in your book. This is what we can do. Now, before we move on to something more important, I have to hear about your horse. You have to tell me about your 12 years old and your horse. Tell me about your horse, please.
Oh, good Lord. I had this love for animals, and I wanted a horse, but I was raised, my parents were divorced, and my mother was a real estate agent, not making very much money, and so I couldn't have a horse. So basically I got my lunch money every day that I would save, and I would eat everybody else's lunch. So after a year and a half of eating my friends' lunches, I saved up enough money to buy a horse, but I couldn't afford the saddle, nor could I afford a horse that had been trained. So I bought kind of a crazy horse. And this gentleman just sold me the horse. I walked it home, but I had no place to put the horse.
You're serious now. You're serious now.
Oh, I'm dead serious.
This is a full-grown, this is a horse, a quarter horse, was it? Something?
It was an Arabian.
Okay, because I know horses, so yeah, they're beautiful animals.
It was 3 years old, and we had bright blue carpeting in our living room, and I didn't know where to put it, so I put the horse in our family room. And my mother came home, and she was horrified. She didn't know what this horse was doing in there. Our backyard was the size of a bedroom, so I couldn't put it back there. And I had purchased the horse. I couldn't return it, so
has she awakened yet? Hey, Ma, look here. I can't believe this. Melissa's got a horse in the living room. Unbelievable. But you know what? That's the power of goal orientation.
That truly is, and I've never stopped. You just do whatever you want to and look back later.
Do you have a horse today?
I don't, but ironically, my mother ended up breeding Arabians, so she has about 13 of them now, or I think maybe a few have passed away since then. But no, my addiction became hers, and she ended up starting to breed Arabians.
Oh, wonderful. I grew up with thoroughbreds, and I love horses. They're my favorite. My second favorite animal in the world is a tiger. And speaking of tigers and horses, which we're going to come up on a newscast here, so we'll be gone for about 3 minutes, but we'll be back with Dr. Luke. This is turning out to be fun. Don't go away. And we're speaking with Dr. Melissa Luke, author of the book, Life in the World of Yomo. And I've had the opportunity to meet Yo, and he's a pretty cool guy. This is a wonderful concept, Dr. Luke, and I'm enjoying. I haven't finished the book, but I've leafed through it and circled a bunch of things that I'm crazy about. And I wanted to talk with you about the power of positive thinking. Somebody's stuck in a job somewhere, or they're getting ready to graduate from school, and they are kind of confused. How do you get yourself oriented to start thinking positively?
That's an excellent question, Paul. In fact, I'm going to backtrack a couple of seconds just to give you an example. When I first wrote this book, it was for 18 to 24, 25-year-olds. And I beta tested on my management audiences. So the audiences that I was speaking in front of were on average 35 to 45 years old. Mm-hmm. And their positive thinking skills have dropped significantly, especially since, from the age of 5, it just kind of decreases down. So I really beta tested on them, and I asked them on a scale of 100%, 0 being you hate your job so much you have to give yourself self-affirmations in the shower to go to work, and a 50% would be I'm just too lazy to stick stuff on Monster.com and I need a paycheck, or 100% would be I can't wait to go to work the next day. Well, out of the last 1,500 people I pulled, they were running at a 67%, which is fairly low. I mean, if you're operating that low, it's a problem. And so when I got that statistic, that's where I decided we have to help these people think differently. And the power of positive thinking is necessary to pull that number up. I mean, you can't operate at a 67% and be good at what you do. And so the power of thinking, most people don't think it can happen, but it is. I mean, we've seen millions of neurological studies of powerful thinking that change everything about a person's life. So I had to make it simple so people could understand that they really can do it. In fact, there was one really awesome study that was conducted where basically this is just on thought, but in fact, you can Google this. It's the finger muscle experiment. Basically, they just had a bunch of college students pull a rubber band. They measured the strength in their muscle, and they had them pull a rubber band for 20 or 30 minutes a day for a couple of weeks. And they found that there was a 28 to 31% increase in the muscle strength, which is normal. I mean, if you go to the gym and do that, same thing's going to happen with any muscle. But then they had a bunch of people, a different group, come in. They could not move their fingers, and they had to sit there and think about pulling this rubber band with their finger, but they couldn't move their finger. They had to sit on a chair in the dark with their eyes closed and think about pulling it for the same duration of time. You're not going to believe this, but literally the muscle strength grew by 22% just by thinking it. So we can change anything that we want to with the power of thought. We just need to be reassured that we can do it.
Well, somebody a lot smarter than me is quoted as saying, anything the mind of man can perceive and believe, it can achieve.
Absolutely.
And that's a pretty broad statement if you think about it. Anything covers everything. Now I'm not talking about somebody that's not quite right mentally, and he decides that he's going to get on that ladder and climb up to the moon in the next 5 minutes. I'm not talking about that. but reasonable things. Things that are within the grasp of people, but they don't realize it. If you can conceive of this, you can achieve it. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to sit on a rocking chair, sipping a nice cool drink on a hot summer day and watching this all happen, but you can make it happen.
Oh, absolutely. I think people are just told that they can't do it, or mediocrity is becoming the norm. I mean, 80% of the people in the United States don't currently like what they do, and I don't think it's necessarily that they just decided that they would go into a career that they don't like. I think a lot of it is the mental state that they're in and the people that they're around. And obviously we can't change the people around us. So you got to change your thought process and you really can change your thought process in the course of 24 hours. I mean, some things take much longer than that, but it really is how you look at life. And William James was a famous philosopher, and he said one of the most incredible things that we learned in the 19th century was simply by changing our mind, we can change our life. And it's true, but most people just don't understand that it is so easy to do. You just need a couple of steps to get there.
Well, your soul is in control of your mind. Your soul, that one little cell where you live, this is Paul theory. Maybe it works for me. Let's put it that way.
Paul theory. I love Paul theory.
I don't know. Your soul is in control of your mind, and then your mind is in control of your actions. So if you just put your mind on hold for a second and let your soul take over, you quoted William James. There are many, many, many people, philosophers all over the world that have touched on this repeatedly over hundreds and hundreds of years. And there are always groups of people that figure this out, or they read these kinds of thoughts, and they step forward and they go on and create great things when maybe they started with nothing.
Absolutely. In fact, Paul, you're just as great a thinker as the wonderful C.S. Lewis, because he said, you don't have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body.
You have a body. And you know what? I read that in your book, and it was like, I don't know if you can hear this or not, but the bell rang. I said, oh, my God, that's wonderful, because I'd never seen that before. And you yeah, exactly. You are a soul. You have a body. So positive thinking can make a big difference. Your attitude determines your altitude.
It does. And in fact, if people could, I just wish that I could send people pictures of the inside of their brains to see how it works, because it's an amazing mess to see. But it almost, if you could imagine a bunch of Christmas tree lights, you know how you roll them up and throw them in the attic and you bring them back down the next year and you're like, oh, why didn't I wrap those properly? So you just got this mess and you don't know what to do. You throw them away, or you
That's the definite, you just defined regret.
But that ball of Christmas tree lights, it would be considered something called a neurological network in your head, and you have billions of balls of Christmas tree lights in there. And basically, the more you think about something, the Christmas tree ball will get bigger, which in the case of pulling it out of the attic, you don't want it to get bigger, but in your brain you do. It's almost like working on a muscle. So if I was to sit and focus for 40 or 45 days on something and tell myself that I was something that I wasn't, I'm literally going to grow a muscle in that neurological network. I'm going to grow a muscle in my head that didn't exist before. And we can take pictures before and after and see what happens to people. And there's times where, I've tested myself, because I can't wander around and tell people how to do this if it doesn't work on me. And I've tested myself to the point where I almost believe that I've done things that I have not done before. But it's just a thought, and it's a really easy, fun thing to do. But if people could see what goes on in their heads and how their brain will build just by simply thinking of something. And then if you think of something, a bad thing less, then that muscle shrinks in your head, which is ironic. I mean, how many times have you been in the car or at home talking to yourself, having an argument with someone that's not even there, like a ex-friend or an ex-boyfriend or husband or wife, or you're having an argument and those people aren't even there. You're just building a bigger muscle in your head with that.
I talk to myself all the time. The problem is I don't like any of the answers. It's kind of like cuckoo. But we're talking about the power of positive thinking, and also in your book, finding your strengths. So to me, finding a way to get into a positive area of thinking is how you begin then to locate your strengths.
Absolutely. And in fact, I'm not a big person on theft. In fact, my doctorate is in white-collar crime and fraud, or the reduction of it. So I don't really teach people how to steal, but in this book I do. We're stealing personalities. So it's not really like identity theft. You can't steal the person themselves or their credit cards, but you want to steal their personalities. And most of the great thinkers that have been written about over the last couple of 100 years will steal somebody else's mindset. They find somebody that has a greater thought process, or they can do something better. You don't have to know them. They could be dead. I mean, in fact, two of the people I steal their personalities from are dead, and I've never met them, but I can read about them.
One of my first bosses told me if you do something like that once, it's stealing, but if you do it more than once, that's research.
Exactly.
The late Arthur W. Carlson, who was president of Susquehanna Broadcasting, said that to me one day when I was about 22 years old. He was a remarkable guy. He passed away just last week after an amazing career. But, you do something like that once, yeah, that's stealing. But if you do it more than once, that's research. And from that research, which is a gathering of stuff from a whole bunch of sources, comes this one little chestnut that makes the difference.
Absolutely.
Dr. Luke, we have to take a break. We're going to come back, and I want to talk with you about developing an empowered corporation.
Perfect.
So stand by. We'll be back in, I guess, about 2.5 minutes. We're speaking with Dr. Melissa Luke, author of the book Life in the World of Yomo. Dr. Luke, do you have a website that people can go to?
Absolutely. It's drmelissaluke.com, or they can jump on Facebook and like me at Dr. Melissa Luke. So either one, I would love to have you.
Because I want folks to find this book, and I want them to get it and read it. It's inspiring. It's really wonderful. And by the way, from the other side of the coin, here's a quote. Here's a quote that I found. This is Snoopy, the little dog from Peanuts.
Absolutely.
He says, "My life has no purpose, no direction, no aim, no meaning, and yet I'm happy. I can't figure it out. What am I doing right?"
Don't you wish we were all like Snoopy?
Oh, he's a cutie pie. Let's talk about building an empowered organization and the power that comes as a result of that, if you can actually get the culture changed in a company.
Well, it's a difficult process, but a lot of our companies, that's where I actually transitioned from. A lot of the career time that I was in was analyzing companies, wandering around, going in, finding out what was wrong with them, and then trying to fix them from the fraudulent aspect. And that's when I learned how many people were really miserable in their job, and I think a lot of fraud is caused by misery. And I think basically what I've taglined is the wise company, are companies that can really figure out how to motivate their employees to do well, that not only brings the profitability up of the company, but it makes the people happy inside of it. Because nobody wants to go to work and not like what they do. The more you like what you do, the better off you are. And so that's basically my career right now is going in, helping companies figure out how to be a wise company. And that is looking at the personalities of people. And it's not running a company like we're back in the Industrial Revolution. I mean, most of the successful companies out there have changed significantly. I mean, look at Google. They roller skate in there and bring their dogs to work and sit on purple bouncy balls, which, by the way, is what I'm doing on right now, sitting on a purple bouncy ball.
It sounds good to me. Dr. Luke, if I may, I want to share something with you that may be of help. Perhaps when you're speaking somewhere. About 12 or 14 years ago, I had a company, and we had a large group of four different markets of radio stations, and we had managers and sales managers, business managers, program directors in each of those cities. And I called all these myself and my partner, called all these managers together because we wanted to start building an empowered organization. And my partner was the fellow that developed this thought process. He said, here's the deal. We're all standing on the shore with our hand on a boat that we are going to be the pilot of. Every one of us, not just the managers, everybody in the company. And out there in the bay is a light. And we're going to have every one of the boats head toward that light. Now, one of the guys that's in one of these boats is the manager of the station, and one of them is the sales manager, and one of them is the program director. But everybody else is in their own boat also, because they all have duties that they have to accomplish. But what we have to do is get everybody going toward the same lighthouse. And the job of the general manager is to keep the boats in alignment. His job is not to float any of the other boats or power the other boats. That's not his job. His job is to make sure that everybody understands, A, what the goal is, in other words, the light, and B, that everybody's in alignment going toward the goal, and then get out of their way and let them pilot their boats. And we did that. And it took about a year of going through some machinations here and there. But what happened was a very small group of people, 5% of the people, didn't like the idea, and they left the company. And the other 95% embraced it. And we had the best staff for 7 years in that company you could have ever imagined. But it was hard. You know, you had to constantly revisit. We had to remind each other. We have to stay in alignment. Everybody going toward the light. They're in your own boat. Because you know something? Let's suppose you're a salesperson for a company, and you're out selling. You're representing the company, right? Mm-hmm. Does your manager really know what you're saying?
Probably not.
He has an expectation, but does he know? Well, for that moment, between you and the client, who's running the company?
The salesperson.
See, and that's the conclusion we came to. So, and I see this through this book. I see all of those thoughts through. If I'd have had this book in 1997, it would have been easier.
Well, those are great. I love to hear those stories because it tells me that you are running a wise company. And in fact, I think a lot of companies write a mission statement, maybe from ink and feather from 200 years ago, and say, that's the mission, that's where we're going, and they walk away from it and they never look at it again. And most employees don't even know what the mission statement is of their company, and it's going back to what is the vision, what is the goal, and get out of the way. And I learned basically just like you did. I was running my trading floor, one of the first in the United States, and I was supposed to be breaking into E-Trade or into China before E-Trade. And I ended up for a year being inundated with sticky notes all over my desk from every department with a problem coming in and asking me how to fix it. And I finally walked. I said, this is the vision. We're going someplace else, and I don't have time for this. So I walked out of my office, went and set up in a different state so I could get away from them. And I found out I wasn't as important as I thought I was because within a week I stopped getting phone calls and everybody started running the company on its own. But I made the decision too late, and I lost the company. Obviously, E-Trade still exists, and you would be lucky to find me in a Google search. But that was a really good experience that I went through. Is letting
and how much stronger were you when you emerged from that? You had to be Godzilla powerful. And speaking of that, we did find the mystery. We cured the mystery of Godzilla. I don't know if you heard that part earlier.
Is he wearing a lizard?
It was a guy. It was a guy. The suit weighed 220 pounds, and there was a guy inside of it. A guy named Haruo Nakajima. Ah, Dr. Luke, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today. We need to do this again.
Well, it's been Paul.
If you can stand it.
I would love to.
Have a great holiday season, and we will talk again. Thank you.
I will, and I will get you a Yomo as soon as I make one.
Oh, thank you. I want one. Thanks much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. We'll be back.